Ladies and gentlemen, I want to speak, if I may, of politics, of moral obligations, of legal obligations, of plans, but above all, of urgency. I will have some thoughts which I'd like humbly to submit to you. I'll have a message which I hope that Washington might be inclined to hear, and I'll end with a message that I hope the European Union may want to hear. First of all, let me say something which puts me slightly at variance with my colleague Jim Higgins and my old friend Wes Clark. There is politics involved in this, but I'm not sure it advances the case of humanity and compassion, a case which is based fundamentally not on politics, but on human rights of the people suffering desperately and under constant threat in Ashraf camp, to mix the politics with this. I'll be very blunt with you. I support and admit second place to no one in my support for the extraordinary courage and determination of those who seek freedom in Iran against a bitter and terrible tyranny. The single issue to me, and I shall return to this at the end, is the urgency to provide protection to these people. That is the single issue on which we should concentrate. If we succeed in that, if we succeed in finding real protection for those suffering in Ashraf, we open up the possibility to all the other things that we then wish to see. And I would believe that it would be better for us just to concentrate very fiercely on that thought. Let me talk first of all about moral obligations. And I hope Washington understands this. They have a moral obligation here, a direct moral obligation. If you saw that video, every single one of those slaughtered before our eyes on that video was carrying a personal certificate signed by Washington, promising to secure their protection in the future. It is difficult indeed to believe that at least in that case, that is not a promise that has not been betrayed. A big word, betrayed, but Washington should understand that. And if this gets worse, ladies and gentlemen, and my view is it will, then there is a terrible burden of moral obligation that rests at Washington's door. Now, Washington says, well, we have put aside our legal obligations in this and we've handed them over to the Iraqi government. Well, maybe you can put aside a legal obligation, but ladies and gentlemen, you cannot put aside a moral obligation. And what is more, you cannot put aside the blame that will attach to Washington and no one else. Washington should understand, I hope they do, that handing over a legal obligation to someone else, even if you may do it, and I doubt that, does not remove you from the moral consequences and the blame of the world if that should happen, which God forbid it should in the future. My second point, Mr. Chairman, and not wishing to go on for too long, is the legal position here. Well, there are those who argue, and I'm one of them, that these refugees have the direct protection of the Fourth Geneva Convention for Refugees. It is said that they were granted the protections of the Fourth Geneva Convention because the place was at war, but once the fighting finished, that protection is removed. I can find no legal precedent for that concept. The refugees in Bosnia had the protection of the Fourth Geneva Convention. That did not end, as Wes Clark will remember, when the war finished. It ended when the condition of those refugees was assured in a proper and decent way, even beyond the days of conflict. And then there is a second issue, which I think Washington does understand, that it is illegal, allow me to say this again, it is illegal under international law to forcibly relocate refugees. It can only be done on a voluntary basis. Let me just remind you, if anybody, Iraq or anybody else, were to act to forcibly relocate these people, they would be acting in direct contravention of international law, and anybody who aids and abets that process by standing aside when they can stop it is at least party to that act. There is only one way that these can be moved, and that is on the basis of voluntary repatriation. So talking about voluntary relocation is a very important part of our campaign, it seems to me. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to finish now. There are plans. There are many of them. Struan's is one. So my message to the European Union is this. We need to get some monitors in there. I don't say a company of soldiers, though they'd have to be protected by the United States. Of course, we understand that. Maybe that's an obligation the United States should fulfill, if others will take from them the obligation they gave to every resident to protect them themselves. It would require only a monitoring team in there to prevent this happening. Now, I hope that could be done by the UN. I find it impossible to understand why the UN refuses to do this. I'm told it's because the UN consider it too dangerous. I mean, I thought the UN was there to protect others from danger, not to protect itself from danger. But if it requires the United States detachment to provide protection for that, then let it happen, but let it happen soon. And I hope that the European Union, I hope Baroness Ashton, with whom I spoke earlier today on this matter, will now use the full power of the European Union to persuade the UN to take that action, and take it very soon. If that doesn't happen, but it's very much a second best, then I hope the European Union will step in and do it itself. Thank you very much.